Indeed, it went to the level of the presidency. And we thought that the opportunity had come to unlock a lot of value in the energy space. But unfortunately, that was not to be. But we recognize the new parliament, or the 12th parliament, the engagements have been fairly quick. And we have had engagements. Even here, we have had a very successful retreat here. And we're still anxious for these two bills to go through. And so we are hoping, like I mentioned in the last session, those of us who are in manufacturing, that our brothers and sisters in the Senate will also see the sense of urgency so that those two bills can go through, and in so doing, help the industry look after this very critical resource called energy. Energy has been deemed an enabler, and it cuts across the big four agenda, be it in manufacturing, where we have cried for reduced costs. We have also been anxious to have clean, reliable power. When we come to agriculture, the traditional methods of agriculture means that the yields are much lower than would be expected. And therefore, we are looking at agriculture getting mechanized, which then means that energy is a critical input in mechanization and improvement of technologies in agriculture. When it comes to health, obviously energy is a key player in enabling health equipment, health facilities, etc. And in housing, we are looking at energy as being an input in housing, and more importantly, after those houses are complete, they will be consuming energy. And that energy should be affordable, should be reliable, including energy used for cooking. The statistics of a study done several years ago indicate that 70% of the energy used in our country is from bioenergy, or biomass, which basically means attacking our forests. And it continues to be so. 20% fuel, about 9% electrical power, and 1% renewable. The reason I share this statistic is because this new bill in energy also covers, in a much exhaustive and comprehensive way, bioenergy. And that's a conversation we don't seem to have. We don't talk about bioenergy and give it the kind of focus that we give the other forms of energy, basically petroleum and power. And I say this because at the end of the day, this equation of energy has an impact in the environment that we live in. We're just coming from a dry spell. These days I've taken an interest of reading what the weatherman has to say. Previously, I never used to care much. And indeed, at the end of the news, when they tell you the temperatures would be like whatever they will be, it has never affected what I'm going to wear tomorrow. But I think now with climate change, the weather patterns are changing. It has an effect on agriculture. It has an effect on many other things. Therefore, we need these bills to come out so that we can start addressing things like bioenergy. Now, so we are hoping that the process of those bills will go through. Then we engage you now in the operationalization of those bills. And again, we are looking forward to continued constructive engagement so that we can do it faster and do it in such a way that we can start realizing the benefits from those bills. That said, in as far as the bills are concerned, the other important thing is oversight. We have state agencies especially on the electrical power supply chain. We have others in petroleum. This energy needs to be produced, transported or stored, and ultimately getting to the consumer in such a way that it is not only safe, reliable, but also cheap. And those who render that service have cost inputs. And one of the things that we have been wishing probably to have more focus on is addressing the issue of efficiencies of those agencies. And in so doing, reduce the cost. Because if there are any inefficiencies in the internal processes of those organizations, be it in the procurement, be it in the operational phase, then it means that the cost of generating electricity, the cost of transporting petroleum, etc., is such that we do not become competitive. In the electrical sector, we are looking at efficiencies. We are also looking at the role of the different bodies that oversee these parastatals. And that includes the board. How strong are they? How independent are they? And are they playing an effective role in ensuring that the operations are such that the costs of running them is low? So that's one thing that we would like you to keep in mind in the oversight role that you have. There's also issues to do with cost of projects. You see, when the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act gravitates towards what we call use of the lowest tender. But one thing I can say as an engineer is that having the lowest tender doesn't mean that that is the most competitive cost or most cost-effective method. Because at the end of the day, the document that is prepared by procurement to procure services will ultimately determine who the players are and ultimately determine the cost of that project, and thereby meaning that that it can be such that maybe our costs of projects need to be looked at, because the higher the cost, they also have an input on the tariffs. Perhaps just to talk in closing, the petroleum downstream sector, don't want to be drawn into the debate of VAT, but one of the products that we're looking at in petroleum is LPG. And what we are hoping as the new bill gets promulgated is that LPG will get the focus it deserves, because you can't tell people not to clear the forest and they don't have an alternative, especially now that the cost of kerosene is more or less the same cost as diesel. It did good in terms of preserving our vehicles in that adulteration will be reduced. But for the mwananchi, of course, there is an impact. So I would say, in passing, if the bill goes through, and we're hoping that it will go through sooner rather than later, we're looking forward to engaging you so that some of the things we have discussed today here in terms of making this country competitive and affecting the Big Four agenda positively can